All right, consider this. Big if there exists some supernatural being that knows everything knowable, can do anything doable, wants only what is good, has very particular ideas about what it wants you to do and not do, and will punish you or reward you greatly, depending on whether or not you behave in the way this being wants you to behave, then would you accept the claims it makes about what kinds of actions are good and bad? Would you do what it tells you to do and judge the behavior of others based on the directives of this being? Okay, so why don't you go ahead and pause your video, reread what's on your screen, think carefully about how you'd answer these two questions, and then when you're ready to move forward, go ahead and restart your video. Seriously, you're not going to pause your video, reread this monumentally important question that's on your screen and think really carefully about how you'd answer these two questions? Come on, have some fun. Pause your video when you're ready to rock and roll, go ahead and restart it. All right, so if you considered carefully the two questions here, you'll recognize a couple of things. One is that the being that's described here has the same features associated with the God of the three major monotheistic religions, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. And you would also recognize that if you genuinely believed that this being exists, this all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good being exists, and it's a being that can punish or reward you for how well you fulfill its demands and commands, of course you would do what it tells you to do. And of course you would judge others by the standards set out by this supreme being. The only reason you would not do what it says is if you were a masochist and you wanted to bring about tremendous suffering on yourself. Okay, so if we agree God exists, then some of the ethical problems that we've been exploring up to this point are kind of solved for us. One of the problems that gets solved is we now have something to put in the foundation or use as the foundation for all of our moral judgments. Because if God exists, then that makes real the values upon which all the moral obligations and moral prohibitions we articulate are based, right? It allows us to have a foundation for our moral system. It also does something kind of funny for us. It can provide a rational basis for us performing actions that don't actually benefit us. In fact, they may be even actions that bring about harm to us. In other words, if we agree God exists, then we have a perfectly rational basis to be altruistic, to do things for others because God commands them, even though they're not necessarily bringing about benefit for us. If we agree God exists, then we actually have an incentive to behave morally. And we have reason to avoid behaving immorally. And finally, we have moral authority for the claims that we make. So when we go about the world telling people how we think we're supposed to live and what kinds of things we're supposed to do and not do, we have authoritative reason for making the claims that we do, because this is what God commands. Okay? So if we agree that God exists, then we have we have as our ultimate value what God values, what God wants, and what God commands. And that serves as the foundation for our moral structure. Okay, and if we do that, we've embraced what's called divine command theory. Divine command theory, that what matters most is what God values, wants, and commands. And that's what we should use as the basis for all of the moral claims that we make. Now, imagine this scenario. Imagine that you and I are stuck on this deserted island with 100 people, and none of us is ever getting off this island. Okay, so we're all stuck here for the rest of our lives. We are all divine command theorists. In other words, all of us, all of the 100 people in us, we agree. Yes, this God that I've been describing, this God is real. This God exists. This God has made really clear what it is that we're supposed to do and avoid doing. Okay, so now we've got some decisions that we have to make because we're on this desert island and we have a limited amount of food. Would it be morally permissible for any of us to take extra food and then scapegoat the person who's the least liked? Well, look over here. Does that sound like something that God commands us to do? Or does it sound like the opposite, right? Would it be morally permissible to bully the person least liked to promote group cohesion? Is that something that God would allow? Or are we supposed to love one another? Are we supposed to care for one another? Yeah. What about kill the person that's the least liked? Get rid of that person who's just annoying. Would that be something that would be morally permissible if we're all divine command theorists? No. What about killing the most useless person to eat him or her? In other words, we're not just killing you because we don't like you. We're killing you because we're actually going to use you. Okay, you're useless and we're going to use you. Would that be morally permissible? No. What about this? Could we kill the person who's the biggest threat to the group's survival? No, unless it's in self-defense. It seems like if we embrace divine command theory and we believe we have a pretty good sense of what God expects from us, then none of these things would be morally permissible. And we could point to, as reasons for our moral claim, we can point to whatever we find in our holy texts that we think justifies our claim that none of these things is permissible, okay? So the divine command theory could solve our problem of values by inserting what God values as the most important thing, the thing that matters to us most, that therefore serves as the foundation for all of our moral claims.